8 News Close-Up, the final countdown to the Iowa caucus. Can any presidential candidate pull off a surprise on caucus night? We'll talk with CBS Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett. Battling snow in sub-zero temperatures, we sit down one-on-one with the remaining White House hopefuls. Hear how they're rallying supporters in a blizzard. After a weather delay, Donald Trump touches down in Iowa. We're live at his rally at Simpson College.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning and welcome to Close Up. I'm KCCI Chief Political Reporter Amanda Rooker. Well, we are in the final stretch before the Iowa caucus, and the final Des Moines Register NBC News Mediacom poll shows a new number 2 candidate among likely caucus goers. Donald Trump is still the far and away frontrunner. He leads with 48% support. That is down slightly from 51% in the last Iowa poll. But the big change here, Nikki Haley is now in second place with 20%. She's up 4% from December's poll. Ron DeSantis dropped 3 points to land now in third with 16%. Vivek Ramaswamy's barnstorming of Iowa may have helped improve his standing. He gained 3 points from last month to now reach 8% support. Asa Hutchinson and Ryan Binkley trail with 1% each. Well, there is a lot to break down with that, so we're joined by CBS Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett. Thank you for braving this Iowa cold to be here. So looking at that poll, anything surprise you from those numbers?
Look, Nikki Haley's in second. That's good news for Nikki Haley. And if you're Ron DeSantis' campaign, you don't want to be arguing against the last poll right before the Iowa caucuses, which is what his campaign has to do. Say, well, the poll's not accurate. It's not capturing our statewide organization, which may prove to be true on Monday, but it adds another dimension of doubt about the DeSantis candidacy here in Iowa. He stakes so much on Iowa, and having the last poll before the caucuses show him in third place is discouraging news, to be sure.
Now, there is one thing that the Des Moines Register highlighted as a potential bright spot for Ron DeSantis. What do we see there?
So the Des Moines Register poll said that among those who were intending to caucus on Monday night, Trump enthusiasm off the charts, DeSantis next, Haley third, and by a substantial margin. So if enthusiasm is what is measured on Monday night, how many people are really willing to brave the cold statewide, and that organization that DeSantis has long spoken of actually materializes, he could finish second. But look, let's be honest with ourselves. We are not talking about a close second. Right. We are talking about a distant second to former President Trump. And I believe, and I think the DeSantis campaign in its most candid hours admits to itself, it has to claim that second place standing.
And you mentioned, Donald Trump has this clearly commanding lead. Looking at past caucus cycles compared to now, how historic is going into the caucuses with a double-digit lead like this?
Never before seen. And remember, the most lopsided Iowa caucus Republican outcome is 1988 when Bob Dole won by 12 points. That's it, 12 points. Anything above 12 points, by definition, is historic. Gerald Ford beat Ronald Reagan in the first Iowa Republican caucus in 1976, 45-43. Anything above 45% is historic. And don't think the Trump campaign has not memorized those markers of historic victory. They have, and if they achieve it, they will pound that into the media and everyone listening about what happened here in Iowa.
So even though he has such a lead, they're looking to just beat history.
They want to not just win, but they know they're going to win. What they're trying to convey is magnitude. And with magnitude, a more important word, inevitable. Former President Trump's campaign wants to send a signal to the country. It's over. He's the inevitable nominee. Everyone back away. Everyone stop thinking anything else is going to happen. If there's a historic victory in Iowa, they will begin to try to make that argument more aggressively than they have before. Doesn't mean it's true, but that's what they'll argue.
Now, another thing this poll looked at was how locked in supporters are and how enthusiastic, as we mentioned, with this cold. I mean, we're looking at feel-like temps of maybe -40 on caucus night. Does that add an extra importance on how enthusiastic supporters are?
Absolutely. And Amanda, one of the most important factors to understand about this race is it hasn't budged. I was here in August. We saw each other.
When
we
it was
talked about
warm.
it then. Warm, much more delightful.
Right.
I was always delightful. Don't get me wrong. The race hasn't moved at all. The only thing that's moved is the length of Trump's lead. That's unlike any Iowa caucus, Republican or Democrat, I've ever covered. And I've started doing this in 1996, coming to Iowa. So that in itself tells you that people are not only locked in, but they know why they're locked in. And if you know why you're locked in and you carry enthusiasm for being locked in, and it's tough and it's cold and it's windy, but you're locked in and you've always been there, you're not going to let that moment go. So the Trump reliance on those showing up is real. It's not manufactured. The question is, has Ron DeSantis built that also kind of enthusiasm, locked-in tendency to get second place?
And can Nikki Haley maybe capitalize on this number 2 moment?
Right. Can Nikki Haley say in the closing hours, hey, I've got a chance? And that's what she's saying. Everyone in America is wondering, do I have a chance? Iowa, you can send that signal. I do have a chance. We'll see.
Well, CBS News Washington correspondent Major Garrett, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, the Republican candidates spent the last week urging people to caucus. Next on Close Up, hear their final pitch to voters. And we just showed you the Iowa poll giving Donald Trump a huge lead among Iowa Republicans. We're live in Indianola, where the former president will likely try to turn that support into caucus votes. The 6 remaining Republican candidates are doing whatever they can to encourage potential voters to get out and caucus. Ron DeSantis is on his Countdown to Caucus tour. He's in Ankeny Sunday night at the district venue. I spoke with DeSantis about whether this freezing weather could help or hurt his chances on caucus night. How is this weather impacting your final push to caucus night?
Well, we really approached Iowa the way people that have done well have approached it, really ground up. And that was all geared towards this caucus night, knowing that there may be some challenges there. So I think we're in good shape. I think our folks that have committed to caucus are people that show up to the caucus. And they know that the weather's not going to be great, but they're very committed to do it. But clearly, it is going to impact the turnout. I mean, I don't see how it won't.
Given Trump's commanding polling lead for the past several months, there may be some Iowans that see that and write off the caucuses as a foregone conclusion and stay home. You know, how do you motivate your supporters to actually go out and not see this race as wrapped up for Trump?
Well, we've been able to get tens of thousands of people to commit to caucus with us. I mean, it is going to be a turnout game. It's going to be about identifying your supporters, turning them out, and having them bring as many people to the caucus site as possible. So our folks are committed. Our folks are habitual caucus goers. They go all the time. I think it may be more impactful on people that are less reliable caucus goers, and whether they determine that they want to go or not. But I think our people are ready to go. We didn't expect this to be something that was going to get handed to us. We knew we had a lot of media against us. We've had more money spent against us than Trump and Biden combined in the 2024 cycle. So we see that. People see that I'm a threat to D.C. We will absolutely be a change agent. And so you get a lot of opposition. So I think our folks, they appreciate kind of like, we're fighting the good fight here against a lot of the entrenched interests. So I just think it plays into that. So they are going to turn out, and that'll be good for us.
You've kind of referenced caucus cycles past when Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, and Ted Cruz have won the caucuses. When you were setting up your Iowa strategy, Did you look at all to how, Mike Huckabee or Rick Santorum or Ted Cruz ran, their Iowa operation? Did that impact your Iowa strategy at all?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, I think, Cruz had a really good organization. People said it was the best that they'd seen. Now Governor Reynolds, of course, has endorsed me. Bob Vanderblat's endorsed. They said what we've done is better than what Cruz had in 2016. Santorum, of course, went to all 99 counties. He'd show up. We've shown up, and we've done that. Huckabee had a lot of grassroots energy, and we have that too. I have people coming from all across the country paying their own way to go from Texas, California, Florida, all these places to come to Iowa just to make phone calls for the campaign. So I think those three, kind of the grassroots energy, the hard work of being willing to get around, and then the organization, we've put kind of all three together, and I think that that's going to bode well for us.
One thing that's consistent between those three past Republican, caucus winners is that they had evangelical Iowans on their side that really, kind of helped them come out on top. How do you hope that the faith community in Iowa, I guess, turns out for you on caucus night?
Well, they do turn out. I mean, I think that's the great thing. Somebody like a Bob Vanderplaats, they have a big network of pastors. These are folks that turn out. The people in their congregations turn out. I'm not trying to be a contort myself into some pretzel to try to assuage voting groups. I'm somebody that relies on faith in God, being a husband, being a father, and being a leader for this country that understands a president, from a governor, a president, anyone, you're a servant of the people. You're not a ruler over the people. God is the ruler over the people. I'm here to serve, and I'm here to stand for the truth.
Many polls, including the latest Iowa poll, show a battle for second place between DeSantis and Nikki Haley in Iowa. Haley's final campaign stops include events in Dubuque, Story County, and Dallas County. I spoke with Haley about her strategy to win over Iowa's evangelical voters and why she says she's a better candidate than frontrunner Donald Trump. In 2016, 62% of Republicans who caucused self-identified as evangelicals. What is your campaign doing to try to win over Christian conservatives in Iowa?
I think being myself. I walk by faith, not by sight. The reason that I don't get personal in these politics like the fellas do is because I know that God has me by the right hand. And this is something that we know we're doing for the right reasons. There were 14 candidates. We had 2% in the polls. We continue to build by just being me, letting people know who I am, what I believe in, the fact that I want us to go back to faith, family, and country. We've got to have a new generational conservative leader that's going to move past this negativity, move past this chaos. We can't do this anymore. But what we can do is say we're better than this. We can do more than this. I think President Trump was the right president at the right time. I don't think he's the right president going forward because we can't lose again. We've got to win, and the only way we win is if we make sure that we make a change for a new generational leader.
I want to talk a little bit about last week's presidential debate that was here in Des Moines. There was a lot of mudslinging on that stage, a lot of policy questions that turned into attacks between you and Ron DeSantis. You continue to say chaos follows Donald Trump. How can you reassure those Iowans that after they saw a whole lot of negativity on stage, if you were in the White House, chaos would not follow you?
I think that you first have to look at debates the week of. There's a lot that happens. We've seen a lot of lies on TV, and when those play out on a stage, it becomes a bit of a scrum because you're trying to get, the truth out there about what you believe on certain issues. And so it does come across chaotic, and that's unfortunate. That's why we have done over 160 town halls. We are focused on going and telling people everything that we're for. But I think, look at my record. You look at me as a governor in South Carolina, and we went through a lot of really tough crises, and we came back stronger than ever. We didn't have riots, we didn't have fighting. We had prayers, we had vigils. We brought South Carolinians together. We dropped 11% unemployment down to 4%. We did voter ID, we did tort reform, we did pension reform. We passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. We paid down our debts, we built up our coffers, and everybody was proud again. You look at what I did at the UN. We took $1 billion off the top. We made sure that we told countries what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. And we were able to get things done. The tone at the top matters. And I have always focused on how do you bring out the best in people so that we can move forward. And that's what I'll continue to do as president.
The other thing that I continue to hear from Iowans who are still undecided is that they just want to caucus for someone that's electable. Are you electable?
You know, I think look at the polls. Ron doesn't defeat Biden. Trump is head to head with Biden. It's going to be another nail biter where we're holding our breath. On a good day, he might be up by 2. In every one of those head to head polls, I defeat Biden by double digits, 17 points. You win by double digits going into D.C. That's a mandate to get our economy back on track and stop that wasteful spending. That's a mandate to get our kids reading again and go back to the basics on education. That's a mandate to secure our border with no more excuses. That's a mandate to bring law and order back to our country, and that's a mandate for a strong America that we can all be proud of. That's what we're focused on. That's where we're trying to go, and that's what I think Iowans want.
Meanwhile, Vivek Ramaswamy has crisscrossed Iowa for months, visiting each of the state's 99 counties twice. His final campaign stops include Polk County, Ames, Coralville, Davenport, and Dubuque. But Ramaswamy is still polling in the single digits heading into caucus night. He told me he still believes barnstorming the state will pay off on caucus night.
You're busy. I can tell, you're in the car between campaign events. We appreciate you making the time. But the last few days, have been difficult with weather. We've seen snowstorms. We've seen freezing temperatures. How has the weather in the final days impacted campaigning for you?
Look, for us, I think we've actually gone on to do basically almost all of the events we planned, except for a couple that were just physically impossible to get to. On the big snow days where the other candidates canceled, in every one of those cases, I did at least 4 events on each of those days. And that tells you how we've been running this entire campaign. By the end of it, I will have done over 390 events here in Iowa. That's more than the rest of the field combined. And I think it's because I respect this process. And so I think we're going to do really well here and shock the world on Monday night.
Yeah, when you say that you think you are going to shatter expectations on caucus night, what does that mean? What does a win on caucus night look like for you?
A win on caucus night is you have the clear expectations that have been set by, I think, a lot of the polls. I think a lot of these polls are dead set artificial, where the media has set those expectations. We are going to come in significantly in excess of those expectations. And I think I'm the only candidate that's going to beat expectations that night. That's going to propel us forward to New Hampshire and then to Nevada and then to the nomination from there.
If you're not looking at the polls, what gives you that confidence? I mean, is it just your opinion and what you're seeing? Are you looking at what other
A lot of hard data internally in our campaign. One of the things that we have gained a deep understanding of is who our actual target voter is. And a lot of our voters are voters who share the America First values, but who haven't been traditionally polled or even participated in a caucus before. So we expect a lot of first-time caucus goers to come out and support me on Monday night. And I think that's going to create a tidal wave that the media doesn't see coming.
And another thing that makes you unique in this process is you're the only candidate that has done the full Grassley tour, stopping in all 99 counties twice over. Why did you do that?
Well, look, I think that's showing respect to this process. This is why the Iowa caucus goes first. It's the chance to meet people in person. That's been my favorite part of the campaign. It's also the effort this country deserves. This country's in trouble right now. We're in the middle of a war for the future of our country. And I think what we need is a commander-in-chief who has the energy to really bring a full level of effort on every aspect of this job.
And Asa Hutchinson has held several campaign events over the last 2 weeks in Iowa, trying to gain ground as he currently trails in 5th place. Thursday, he made an appearance at the Renewable Fuels Summit in Ankeny.
There's a couple questions you always ask a candidate. Why are you running? And then the second question is, what distinguishes you from the other candidates? And I can say that I'm the only candidate that grew up on a farm. My dad was a cattle farmer. I learned how to clean out chicken houses, and that's important in life. And I was a member of 4-H. I don't know if anybody else was. But to me, whenever I've been a governor of Arkansas, and Arkansas, like Iowa, is an ag state. And so not only growing up on the farm did I learn to appreciate it, the risks that you take and the challenges, but also as governor, you learn very quickly the importance of the Farm Bill. And let me tell you, this Congress ought to pass the renewal of and extend the Farm Bill. And the Farm Bill should have an energy section in it that has a foundation that we're going to have biofuels production in the United States of America.
And Ryan Binkley also has a number of campaign stops leading up to the caucus. He's making appearances in Clear Lake and Fort Dodge. And this is a live look from Indianola, where Donald Trump is preparing to hold a Get Out and Caucus rally. How Iowa's cold and snow upset his campaign plans last week. Close up, Donald Trump planned to hold events in Iowa this weekend, but blizzard conditions forced his campaign to cancel. Instead, the former president held a live stream event hosted by Iowa Attorney General Brenna Bird.
You know, it's very important to me because Iowa, I think of two things. I think of farmers, but you have a lot of other business, but I think of farmers and I think of politics. And you're first in the nation because of me, not because of the governor, not because of anyone else, you're because of me. Because I put you there. It was up to me, and I put you there. And there was tremendous, really, blowback on doing it. They wanted to put you further back. You're not that big, and some people say you don't represent the country. I think you represent the country as well as anybody or better than anybody. To me, Iowa is such a great institution, having it first in the nation. And I kept you there. As you know, the Democrats moved. They left. They fled town. And I'm sure they're going to remember that, but it looks like we're going to beat them pretty easily in this state anyway. But it was an honor for me to keep you first in the nation. I fulfilled my promises. I fulfilled my promises on ethanol. I got the farmers $28 billion. You know, I said, I guess a couple of people came to say, please don't be so arrogant about getting the Iowa vote. I said, look, I got them $28 billion from China. Do you think Biden would get you $28 billion? He'll lose you $28 billion. And the farmers did. That was one of the greatest deals I made, but I don't talk about it. It was with China because of COVID. I don't even talk about it. But $28 billion, took care of your ethanol, took care of every problem you had. There's nobody, it's been said in even editorials, there's nobody that's done more for Iowa than Donald Trump when I was president.
And right now, Trump is back in central Iowa. He's holding a rally at Simpson College. KCCI's Todd Megal is live on campus. Todd?
Hi, Amanda. We're at the Kent Central
Instead, he fought back and he exposed
Campus Center here. Take a look behind me. You can see that there are several hundred people here. They're mostly folks that have come here in the cold, and I would say maybe a third of these folks are actually from the media from all around the world. Trump is making basically his last big campaign event in Iowa before caucus night on Monday. He had to cancel, as you mentioned, all of his Saturday public appearances due to the big blizzard yesterday. Trump spent the night at the Hotel Fort Des Moines. He did host an online appearance last night, and that's where he talked about his caucus opponents.
You talk about the polls. So Nikki Haley early on had a good poll. It was a fake poll, but she had a good poll where she was up on Biden. But she hasn't had that since. She's getting killed by Biden. She's losing everywhere to Biden. And they used the one poll that was very early that was absolutely ridiculous. And I'm beating him in every poll. Every single poll now, I'm beating him by a lot. And she's going to lose. She's not going to be able to beat Biden. And it's not Biden. People say, how could the guy, he can't walk off a stage. He can't find the stairs.
Full investigation. $30 million.
Now, there are surrogates speaking right now here at the event, and Trump is expected to take the stage here sometime around noon. We'll be here and we'll bring you live reports coming up later tonight on KCCI. We're live in Indiana. Amanda, back to you.
Thanks for joining us on Close Up. Have a great day.